So you could do the Hassan strategy if you, and I agreed with him, and that's what I would have done
Yeah.
if you have actual policies, like you're saying.
That's right.
So you could, because then you could say, hey, this is a distraction from $15 minimum wage and universal health care, et cetera. But Kamala couldn't say it's a distraction
right.
from anything because she doesn't believe in anything.
That's right.
Kamala doesn't believe in anything because she couldn't say $15 an hour or universal health care. Just keep that in the back of your head, I guess. I got an interesting email. Hey, Stephen, I really think this is a topic that is worth considering, and it's super relevant to recent discussions and thoughts you've been having. It's something that I think you and a lot of your audience know intuitively, but I think there's value in illustrating it on a larger scale. I hope you read this email and find it valuable. Basically, I think that besides the lockstep support of the candidate, the right's media domination is also driven by the way short-form content / algorithms incentivize their policies. This is because Donald Trump's slogans are his policies. They're frustratingly stupid and simple, which necessitates a lack of nuance, which means they're extreme. Because they're extreme, they drive engagement. I'll try to keep it brief for this part, but I think it's an important method of comparison for what I'm about to say. It is absolutely going to come across as unrelated and something you give zero fuck about, but I promise I'll get there. I'm very into motorcycles / dirt bikes and riding off-road. I am very frequently fed instructional Instagram reels on off-roading riding techniques. I was talking to a friend about how these videos really annoy me because they never actually say anything valuable. Because of the nature of short-form content, the videos have no time for nuance, and the audience is extremely broad. I'll be recommended a video, and the format will be top 3 techniques for X. X can be hill climbs, riding in sand, technical rocky terrain, off-road riding in general, or off-road riding in general. The techniques in the video will almost always be stand up, be loose on the bars, and look as far ahead as you can. This is because these 3 things are like the foundation of riding a motorcycle off-road. They apply to literally every type of terrain off-road. A video about hill climbs or sand that lists these 3 specific techniques isn't necessarily wrong because these 3 techniques do apply. They sound really good, but to anyone who is beyond a very beginner surface level understanding, these are things they already know, they know to do already, which makes the video effectively useless. There are nuanced techniques that are genuinely important that apply to sand, but don't apply to hill climbs and vice versa. These differences are important for actually learning and progressing, but since it's short-form media with a broad audience and no time, you can't go into them, which basically results in more slop for the algorithm. But at the same time, there's advanced techniques that if I tried to teach a beginner, they could actually be detrimental to their riding as a whole. If I taught somebody how to trail brake, lightly dragging the brakes through a corner before teaching them how to progressively brake off-road, they're going to grab the brakes in a corner and crash, which means the short-form medium incentivizes me to not discuss anything nuanced because it could lead to worse outcomes. Whereas, if you have a long-form course, you can get into the advanced techniques because you know your audience already has the foundation. But without the foundation, the advanced stuff sounds like nonsense. This same concept can be used for anything educational. You cannot teach the nuanced advanced stuff if your audience doesn't know the fundamentals, and sometimes the advanced stuff without the fundamentals leads to detrimental confusion. I think this is something people can intuitively understand, even if they don't give a fuck about whatever subject is used in the example. But I think that this is something that extrapolates well beyond motorcycles or educational content. I think it actually extrapolates really well into politics in general. No more motorcycle-related metaphors from here on out. Understanding complex issues requires a foundation of the basics and additional learning beyond that. There is no actual, quote, it's just common sense, bro, end quote, solution to any of the major issues in the United States. Since people are increasingly getting their information from short-form content, people who are actually trying to solve complex issues are fighting an uphill battle when it comes to spreading their ideas. If I'm a Democrat, it's much more difficult to explain the asylum process than it is for a Republican to say that we should, quote, build the wall, end quote. The same message needs to fit into a 30-second video, or a 280-character tweet, or a headline. Which one will be easier understood? Which one will drive more engagement? I think that short-form media incentivizes, if not demands, a lack of nuance. When I say short-form media, I don't just mean TikTok, Shorts, or Instagram Reels. I think this also applies to reading a headline, short form, versus reading an entire article, long form, and also Twitter as a whole. If this lack of nuance is combined with how social media is incentivized to promote divisive content because it's engaging, I think it really helps illustrate how the right dominates media. A lack of nuance tends to be inherently divisive and inherently engaging. An example of this on the left is defund the police. I think this was always more of a slogan than an actual policy idea, but the example still applies. It was an extremely controversial belief because it removed all nuance, but it was everywhere. A lack of nuance also tends to be inherently short form. Trump's run-up to being elected, his initial election up until now, has a pretty strong correlation with the rise in short-form content. Correlation isn't causation. The causation isn't an argument I'd be inclined to make anyways. However, the overall shift away from long-form to short-form content is important and essential to what I'm about to say next. Trump is literally perfect for weaponizing this shift. A big part of Trump's magic is so simple it's stupid. His slogans are his policy. His slimy reality TV businessman background only makes this stronger, and it explains where it came from. When Trump says, build the wall and make Mexico pay for it, that is literally his policy. And because his followers are so stupid, it makes complete sense to them. They not only get to parrot his slogans, they also get to parrot his policy in the same sentence while feeling smart about it. If I'm on the right, I can hear Trump say, shut down the border, and it's one sentence. I understand it with no research. This applies to pretty much all right-wing policies, tariffs, vaccines, abortion ban, etc. Maybe not all of them are one-to-one slogans to policy, but they're at least so simple that they're easy to understand without any specialized knowledge. They lack any and all nuance required to actually fix anything, but they sound good. When he says he's tired of other countries taking advantage of the US, he's going to make them pay us through a tariff. Literally does not matter how tariffs work. It just needs to sound good as a slogan because to his audience, that means it sounds good as a policy. It's funny because you can see tankies use the same strategy with how they use from the river to the sea. Because the left's policies tend to actually work and they want to fix the problem, they require nuance. It's incredibly difficult to make a left-wing policy the same as a slogan. A perfect example of this is defund the police. Regardless of how stupid it was, this was always a slogan and not a policy. If it was a policy, literally everyone would think about how stupid it was. But that's the funny part. Trump's audience has been trained that slogans equal policy. Their media has been trained on the same thing, which meant that to them, defund the police was a policy, and I think some people that were closer to the center on both sides thought the same thing because of that, and I'd be unsurprised if that resulted in a shift to the right for both. The important thing about this strategy is that it requires enough nuance to prove them. Wait, hold on. Sorry. The important thing about this strategy is that it requires enough nuance to prove them wrong. That their audience will stop listening. Usually it doesn't actually take a real argument to prove them wrong. All you have to do is simply explain the consequences. But even that's enough nuance that nobody is listening or engaging with it anymore. Hence why defund the police was really stupid. The actual ideas behind it may have been sellable, but that requires nuance which won't drive engagement. That's why I can post some sensational misinformation on Twitter and get a correction in 5 minutes, but the sensational tweet will have way more impressions than the correction. A complicated issue demands a complicated solution, both of which require nuance. If your audience is so uneducated and stupid that they can't even comprehend how complicated an issue is, it's unbelievably easy to sell them a simple solution. For example, tariffs to fix inflation. In addition to that, a nuanced solution is less sensational, therefore it doesn't promote a strong emotional reaction. Therefore, algorithms are less likely to promote them since there's not going to be any engagement, which really sucks because if Democrats are actually trying to be good faith in solving issues, that means no engagement on an algorithmic level or an audience level. I think this is part of the, quote, Kamala has no policies, end quote, view. I don't think it's a coincidence that this is something that both Republicans and tankies love to say. Because Democrats are actually trying to fix stuff, they require complex solutions, which means that their policy can't be broken down into a simple sweeping statement like build the wall or from the river to the sea. Hold on, there's like 4 paragraphs off, but it's just interesting that he just...
Then you could say, hey, this is a distraction from $15 minimum wage and universal health care, et cetera. But Kamala couldn't say it's a distraction from anything because she doesn't believe in anything.
That's right.
Right? So that's...
Interesting. I just thought that was funny that you just brought this up. Kamala can do a 5-minute interview where she explains the asylum process and how reforming it would fix the immigration issue and how building a wall doesn't matter because asylum seekers are here legally, but that's not a 5-word slogan, and it requires something beyond surface-level knowledge to understand, which means it's not a policy. The really annoying thing is that because the average Republican is more right than the average Democrat is left, it's easier to sloganize policy. Extreme positions almost necessitate a lack of nuance, so they get a home field advantage in both being able to be simplistic and extreme in their policies, and by that I mean slogans, which means more engagement from their audience and those that disagree. Therefore, the algorithm is going to promote it more, even without an Elon-driven bias. And since the arguments against the slogan policy require even 1% of nuance to understand, they're ignored/silenced. This is the foundation of the it's just common sense. The nature of left-leaning policy and content pretty much requires nuance, and if the algorithm doesn't promote it, that means even if somebody like Hank Green created a 30-second video about vaccines that perfectly explains how stupid the right's view of them is, the video is just going to remain as something that is shown to an audience that most likely already agrees, which doesn't mean it's useless. Hopefully the audience will use those talking points to persuade those around them, which I think is a huge strength of your audience. Worst case scenario, hopefully it at least prevents people from being persuaded by the right. The simplistic nature of the extremes is also a big incentive for all media to either be right-wing grifters or tanky grifters. You've watched Ben Shapiro's old videos on stream where he seems to go more in depth in an at least somewhat good faith manner. But I think Ben Shapiro is smart enough to realize that he doesn't need to do in-depth research. He just needs to know 10% more than the surface level, and he'll still make the same amount of money and reach the same size audience, if not more. If I was him and I saw how successful Tim Pool, Hassan, Dave Rubin were by doing that, I'd turn around and do the same shit. I wouldn't be surprised if even Jordan Peterson looked at how much effort went into his philosophy-based work versus how much went into the political extremist grift and decided to do the same shit. I wish I could say I have a prescriptive solution to this issue. I don't want any of these thoughts to be misconstrued as me saying Democrats need to be more extreme. I think that's silly. I think more blah, blah, blah. But I don't know. I thought it was just funny that he sent me this whole ass email and then I hear Cenk go, Kamala didn't have any policies. Not like we had policies like 15 an hour and universal minimum wage.
If you have actual policies, like you were saying.
That's right.
So you could, because then you could say, hey, this is a distraction from $15 minimum wage and universal health care, et cetera. But Kamala couldn't say it's a distraction from anything because she doesn't believe in anything.
That's right.
Right? So that's why I was saying the ad was a perfect combination of what was wrong with the corporate Democrats and the extreme left. Because the corporate Democrats stripped her of any real substance to run on. Right?
Yeah.
So then all that was left was the extreme left positions that she took on into 2020, right?
Yeah.
So that's my opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I totally agree with it. I don't think you can say like the ad didn't matter at all.
I appreciate that, Destiny.
All right, bye.
Remember to hit that like and subscribe, and don't forget the notification bell so that my videos show up right in your feed.